starting with the NFC North, because we're going to start with the Chicago Bears. Mark, who are the best fits to join the Chicago Bears teams? Where would these guys thrive with the Bears for you?
Interestingly enough, it's not Caleb Williams. I mean, obviously, if they take Caleb Williams, I'm sure he'll do fine. I'm not saying that he's a guaranteed lock to be successful or a guaranteed bust, but I'm sick of hearing the Caleb Williams to Chicago thing. It's probably what's going to happen. But what I think are the two players that would be the safest, 100% going to be a good fit for them no matter what happens at quarterback, no matter what happens with their coach situation. Malik Neighbors, I think is the best receiver in this draft, and I think he's a top 3 overall player in this draft. I do not think he's getting enough credit for how good he really is and how good he can be in the next level. And on the offensive side of the ball, a receiver like that, I mean, I seriously think he's going to be comparable to like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, his LSU brothers. I really think he's going to be that good, that impactful in this league. And I think it's going to happen rather quickly, no matter where he gets drafted. But in Chicago, what a great situation, because he's going to have probably a good quarterback no matter who they take in the draft. It's going to be a guy who can sling the ball, and it's going to be a guy who can extend plays and get you the ball late. I think he'd thrive. And an NFC North division too, with some coverage issues, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, I mean, there's a couple people that are saying, what if the Bears get aggressive and do what Houston did last year and go and get for certain like Neighbors or Dunze, like trade up 9 to go grab one of those guys for Caleb Williams?
It would be wild. I mean, here's the thing: you can probably sit and wait at 9 and have a chance of getting Odunze or Brian Thomas or somebody. But if you want, I'm telling you, Neighbors is in a class of his own in this receiver position in this draft, and I think he's by far and away the best at that position. If you want to go and be aggressive and do that, I mean, it's a big swing, but I think it would pay off for him. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I like Wiggins. I mean, we talked about in our last episode, you need a corner that can just try to take a top receiver out of the game. You got to try to find someone who can follow Amon-Ra. You got to try to find someone who can follow Jay Jettas, right? You got to find someone who can handle and take one of those Packers, those young receivers, one of those Packers out of the game completely and limit the number one option for the quarterbacks in this division. And it always is going to help. When you already have a good run defense, you got to get somebody who can take at least the top prospect, the top receiver out of the game each week. So I go with a lockdown corner.
Yeah, they don't have the worst secondary in the world. So for defense, I actually went a slightly different route. I like Jared Verse. The thing with the Bears is, while they have a really stout run defense, they actually had the lowest sack production in the league last year, if I remember correctly. And they took a step in the right direction, trading for Sweat, but putting somebody on the opposite side of them could be Jared Verse, right? And
could be a problem.
Could be a problem. And I mean, you look at the division you're in, right? I mean, Green Bay, decent offensive line with a lot of receiving weapons. Lions, arguably best offensive line in the league. Vikings are mid-tier, but as we're already talking about, like you're going to need a pass rush. And they're dealing with either Sam Darnold or a rookie quarterback too. Like the more pressure you can generate, the better. So, there's a possibility, hey, Keenan Allen and Moore and Mooney work for their receiver core this year, and they decide to go edge rusher at 9 too. That's 100% a possibility, because they'll have their pick of whoever they want, most likely, barring maybe Atlanta going Dallas Turner or whoever in front of them. So, all right, moving on to, let's go to the Vikings here. Mark, your quarterback prospect for the Vikings is not who everybody's mocking, and I'd love to hear your reason why.
Yeah, everybody's got J.J. McCarthy or Jaden Daniels or somebody that they're moving up for. I actually really, really like from Minnesota, Michael Penix Jr. Why do I like this? Michael Penix Jr. is not getting talked about enough. We've covered this in many prior episodes. We've done individual episodes on him and why, with film evidence as to why we think this. But the biggest thing, they have a good receiving core and a great tight end in Minnesota already. You got Hawkinson. You got the best receiver in the league. You got a young up-and-coming Jordan Addison who's going to get favorable coverage matchups because of Jefferson and Hawkinson. And so what do you do to maximize that offensive attack? You get a quarterback who can make the neutral throws, the tough, tight window throws, the 50-50 vertical throws down the field better than anyone else in this draft. And really, it's not close, to be frank with you. It's Michael Penix Jr. His ability he's incredibly smart. You've heard him when he speaks and interviews, and he's interviewed well with these teams. He breaks down coverage as well. And he's just a great thrower of the ball, putting the ball in spots where your receiver has a favorable chance of coming down with it, even when they're not very open, right? And yes, Jefferson's going to get wide open often and Addison, but in those times where it's tight coverage because it's double or because you know that you're trying to throw it a lot, because let's be honest, the Vikings haven't had a great running game in several years, right? They've won games because they sling it. I don't think their game plan is going to change. I like Penix a ton in Minnesota's system, working with an offensive-minded coach. And I really think that molds really, really well because we've seen him do that kind of offense already.
Yeah, bringing this into reality for a second, too. There's a chance that Minnesota just decides to sit with the draft capital they do have and not trade it to go swing at a quarterback, and Penix most likely will be there. When that first pick, or maybe even that second pick that they have in the first round arrives. And not to mention too, great situation for him because look, we don't know, how he would do with less talented receivers because he basically was throwing to 3 NFL receivers at Washington. What a better situation to put him in to give him one of the best receiving corps in the league. While you were talking, Mark, I just realized something, which is why I had a weird face on my look or a weird look on my face rather. And I think that I'm going to change who I'm going to pick here. I'll go through the offensive tackle that I was going to mention, but Roman Wilson has to be a good fit because then they would have Hawkinson, Jefferson, Addison, and Wilson as their receiving core.
How your mind works. You are such an idiot.
When you were talking, I was just like, wait, no way.
You guys see why when I speak, this is where John's mind wanders. Like he's thinking about rhyming names and like unbelievable. You can tell you're a musician at heart because you're thinking about writing a song about the Vikings rather than
too, but it's all good.
This guy.
Who I actually was gonna say too is Olu Fashanu, and the reason why is because talk about Penix or rookie quarterback or whatever, and you talk about some of the pass rushes that are in this league. Fashanu is probably the best just strictly pass blocking tackle in the league. And for that reason, I do kind of like his pick to the Vikings. It's not an immediate need for the Vikings, but at the same time, the Vikings offensive line could use love. They're just, potentially spreading that draft capital to other positions of need. But they would 100% benefit from, getting a guy like Fashanu on the team as well. I think that they could 100% stand to upgrade their offensive line. Moving on to the Green Bay Packers, and Mark, I think ours are pretty tit for tat here, but I mean, for me, like Cooper DeJean, I think is one of the first people to come to mind. They're needy for a corner. I don't know, safety. I think the Iowa to Green Bay, for whatever reason, like just the kind of Midwest, like same brand in my head. Obviously, I know it's not the same state, but they just it kind of feels like
it is the same brand.
Similar vibe.
It's like that. It's like that hard nose underdog, small town, right? Like Green Bay's a small town, dude, and it's a football king. Iowa is not Central Michigan is a bigger school than Iowa. Did you know that?
I did not know that. And the other thing too is that Iowa prides themselves on developing their talent in-house. I mean, you take a look at what they've done they know the tight end position in the NFL. Like they know how to develop people. Green Bay, same way, man. They develop people. Like that's what
similar culture, and how the coaches work, how the building of the team works. I really like Cooper DeJean, like you said. And if still available, I also like Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo. Cooper DeJean can do more for you in terms of versatility and on the back end. Like, do you need him to play safety? Do you need him to play corner? He can play nickel. He can blitz. He can return punts. So he brings more to the table in terms of as a whole package. But Mitchell is, I think, when it just comes to pure coverage, I think he's a better cover guy. I think he's one of the best cover guys in this draft. Comes from a smaller school and out of the MAC with Toledo. So that's really the only knock people can have on him. Film checks out. Measurements check out, speed checks out. I think he's a steal if he's still there. So that's a guy I think that fits really, really well into that system of, hey, go follow the second best receiver because you got to remember they have Jair Alexander. So if you can pair somebody else up with that, and now you're taking 2 weapons out of the game, I really love that.
I'm changing subjects just a little bit here, but because the biggest knock against Mitchell is Mac, right? didn't see any real talent. Having been a MAC athlete yourself, Mark, like where do you see the biggest, I guess, like drop offs as far as the general level of talent? I know there obviously is one, but like, is it a speed situation? Is it a size situation? Is it a coaching situation? Like, because he was locking guys down all over the place all season. I feel like that's a skill set that will translate to the next level, regardless of him not doing it at the SEC or the Big Ten.
I'll give you two biggest differences as being somebody. I mean, I've played in many MAC games where, we're playing at Bowling Green, Ohio, right? In front of, I don't know, maybe 15,000 people. And then I've played in front of crowds like, I played at Miami in the Hard Rock Stadium with, 90,000 people. Or I've played at Wisconsin in front of 88,000 people. And I've witnessed the jump around fourth quarter. Like, so the environment is the one biggest difference because I only played in a few games in my career like that, where it's that big of an environment and the crowd noise is a different factor. The culture around you is a different, like it's just a different game day feel and the pressure is different. That's the number one biggest thing. A lot of these MAC guys aren't playing in those big games as consistently as guys that are at bigger Power 5 programs. And that's just fact. The second biggest thing, 100%, is the offensive line size. Offensive line, defensive line size, and consistent. Like your average offensive lineman at a Power 5 compared to an average offensive lineman at a MAC is drastically different. And the skill set of those guys that you see, drastically different. I will say there's plenty of guys that have come out of schools like Central or Western Michigan or Toledo that are linemen that do fine, but there's not nearly, like when you look at the percentage, it's not nearly even close. Like that's the big thing. In terms of skill, quarterback play, receiver play, defensive back play. I mean, shit, man, the MAC hangs up there with any of them. I mean, you look at some of the best receivers to ever play, in the NFL, a lot of those guys are MAC guys. Right. We've had MAC receivers get taken in the top 5 before and do like Corey Davis is an all pro several times. Antonio Brown's a MAC guy. He's one of the best receivers we've ever seen play the game. So, I mean, shit, Randy Moss was technically a MAC guy at Marshall. I know. You can do whatever you want to do, but receiver and skill, not a huge drop off. Offensive line, defensive line, big time drop off in terms of the average.
Gotcha. And so, bringing this back to Mitchell as a prospect, like you think his ability to hang with, whoever in the MAC is going to probably translate successfully to the NFL.
I do.
Like there's not a lot of worry there.
And he flashed signs of it. He had a really good Senior Bowl week where he was going against guys like Roman Wilson and all these top receivers that played at big time schools, and he held his own. So yeah. I think that goes to show. If you can cover, man. Like he might not be covering the Marvin Harrisons of the world every week, but when you give him a chance to, he's going to do his best. And he actually did play against Marvin Harrison Jr. and he did pretty well against him overall. Yeah. So in his limited film against stars, he did pretty well.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty high on him, but I think that's just the main knock on him as a prospect is the talent pool that he was going up against. And then finally, we have our Detroit Lions. And how I personally answered this question was, who are the Dan Campbell guys that I think just are going to be gritty, hard-nosed, have a story to, why they play football the way that they play football, all of those things, because those are really, we've seen it 3 years in a row now. Those are the intangible elements that, the Lions tend to look for in their guys. Two come to mind, both of which are second-round guys, and both of them I think are within the realm of possibility. So potentially be looking at a trade back from the Lions at 29. I think that is possible if the guys that they want, are mostly second round guys and the guys that they wanted above them aren't there anymore. These two guys are Xavier Legette. Brad Holmes wants a, large 6'4" type, jump ball kind of receiver. And Xavier Legette lost both of his parents going through school, just kind of, like hard-nosed, gritty, really had to work his way to get any playing time, and told everybody at the bowl last year, like, next year's going to be my year. I'm going to tear it up. Watch me. And, grit mentality. I think he would fit in with Detroit's culture incredibly well. The other one, Zach Frazier, center out of West Virginia, the second ranked center under Jackson Powers Johnson. I like him going to Detroit because I don't think Powers Johnson's going to be there. And I also think, again, better culture fit. This dude's a wrestler. Some other notable wrestlers on the Lions are guys like Malcolm Rodriguez. Like they just find ways to get playing time. And Mark, I'm sure you see this too in the kids that you coach. Like wrestlers just have a different mentality about playing
Wrestlers are
sports.
different. They're a different breed of human.
Yeah, and
They're
it's
special,
you don't miss on
and
them.
it always converts well to football. Like if you're
Right.
if you're a wrestler who also happens to play football, you're a better football player because of that. And there's just no doubts about it. So and that translates really well for guys like linebackers and linemen because it's the physicality, it's leverage, all like that stuff is so big. And you can't teach any better than having to wrestle somebody. So no, I'm with you. I like Cooper DeJean. You know, I know we've mentioned that name before, but I think Cooper DeJean fits this mold really, really well. Gives you another versatile defensive back where, let's be honest, number one weakness on our team is that position. It's defensive back just as a whole. You know, we flash signs of good safety play. We flash signs of good nickel play. We flash signs of some good corner play at times, but we have not been consistent across, you know, an entire season at any one of those positions. Cooper DeJean brings in a guy and he can play any of those spots where you need him to, which is what I really like. And I also really like Kool-Aid McKinstry, you know, just a freak athlete that can run with anybody in this division, that can run with anybody in the NFC. A cover guy, like I've said, that can take other teams' number one guys out of the game so that we don't have to worry about average corners trying to guard superstar receivers, you know, and that's just the Lions had that problem all year. We had guys that are average trying to cover superstars, and it's a tall task. And our number one defensive back just wasn't up for that challenge, and it kept teams in games against us when they really shouldn't have been. And a lot of the losses that we had, you can look at that being the number one reason we lost games. So
Absolutely.
You got to address that position for me.
Yeah, I agree. So one way or another, I know I didn't mention them in mine. And really, I think the problem is that I don't know if any of these top corners that we're talking about totally fit the Lions mold of what they look for in a guy. And so, but I think DeJean's probably the one that fits that the closest. Again, maybe Wiggins, but he doesn't like, you know, run defense.
Maybe Mikey could be another good fit. So
I would like Mikey a lot, but we have a Brian Branch, and so it's like, does it get redundant, or does having two really freaking good nickel corners just in general make your team better?
Again, they don't necessarily have to be a nickel. It's such a weird box that they put that nickel tag on you, and all of a sudden it's like you can only play nickel. You know, there's no way that we could use you in any other way. It's like, I don't know, man. He's played more than just nickel in his college career. Brian Branch played more than just nickel in his college career, thrived at safety spots, did some corner. DeJean did that as well. Mikey Sarensil did that as well. Like, I don't know who we're kidding, but you draft a guy that's versatile. He can do multiple things for you in the secondary. I'd rather take that than a sure fit cover guy. Because if you draft him and he ends up not being a sure fit cover guy, then what else can he do for you?
Useless, right?
Yeah.
So not helpful. So that is essentially our take on the NFC North.